Okay, so I'd like to welcome Carlos Ghosn, the Renault-Nissan-Mitsubishi chairman and CEO. I'd note that Carlos is one of the early predictors of the electric car revolution. And moreover, the companies he oversees has a fund now that invests in mobility startups. So I want to start broad, and basically, can you tell our audience of tech specialists and executives what exactly technology means for the future of your industry?
Well, you know, there is a transformation that is taking place from the classical car, which was a device that allowed you to go from point A to point B, autonomous transportation. You take your body and you transport it from point A to point B, to a completely different element, which is connected, autonomous mobile space. It's a big transformation. It's like the same transformation from the telephone, which was a device to connect, communicate, to today, which is a small computer, which is available to you. And this transformation will take place mainly because of the development of technology. That's the only way it's going to happen. So we have a lot of things happening at the same time. You have the zero-emission cars, which is electric cars, maybe fuel cells in the future. Then you have the connectivity of the car, which allows the car to be really in touch with its environment. Then you have the autonomy, different degrees of autonomy. You know, autonomy means empowering the driver to do whatever he wants in the car. I can drive, I cannot drive, I can do a lot of other things. Or the car drives without the driver, which is also a new notion. Plus the fact that mobility services, which mean a lot of people don't want to own a car anymore, but they want to benefit from a car. So you have a menu of possibilities which are being developed. So this is where technology is playing on every single field. It's playing on electric cars, it's playing on connectivity, it's playing on autonomous, big time on autonomous cars, and it's also playing in mobility services. So technology is going to allow us to make this transformation.
So let's talk a little bit again about the electrification, prong of that overview, because again, you were an early predictor of this, revolutionizing the way we get around. Yeah. The thing is that everyone is piling into this space. You've got, the global incumbents like yourselves. You've got, the Chinese players. You've got new entrants, Tesla's, Dyson. But there's things like everything that you can't predict. There could be unexpected regulatory rollbacks. Sure. Consumer demand is never guaranteed, and battery prices might gyrate. Do you ever think we're gearing up for a race that doesn't exist?
Yeah. Well, first, I was not a predictor on electric car. I was the first big investor on electric car and mass marketer of electric car. Because prediction is very easy. I predict today something, in 1 week I change my mind, no consequence, okay? Well, when you bid 4 billion euro on a trend, it's serious. And particularly doing it alone in front of the skepticism of all the market and your shareholders, etc., it requires a little bit more conviction than making a forecast or prediction. And for me, electric car was obvious since 2008, because all the trends, any analysis of the data you had in front of you and any analysis of the projection of the industry was leading to zero-emission cars. There was no way we would be able to manage the industry without zero-emission cars. Okay, so we saw it in 2008. We invested in 2008. The first years were difficult. And obviously, this is not a consumer-driven demand. The consumer doesn't care about electric car. It doesn't care, by the way, diesel, internal combustion engine. This is not a consumer-driven stuff. This is mainly driven by regulation. This is driven by regulation. And this is the regulator who's going to drive towards electric car. And we see it big time in China, for example. Today, China is the largest market for electric car, only because the Chinese government has decided electric car is the future. And they're putting all the incentives and all the malus necessary in order to drive the consumer there. So coming back, you're saying, is there any market or not? Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, I'm not sure is there a market, but when you know the regulator is going to go there, they're going to be a market.
Well, actually, let's move to that question on regulation. Yeah. In fact, you could see sort of the trend and where we're going with that. Yeah. But Arizona, which is my home state, had a very open policy toward testing technology on the roads. The minute someone died, those doors closed. So, I mean, that is the question. How do you convince regulators that a rolling 2 tons of metal is safe?
Yeah. Well, first, You need to convince them through tests, and obviously because it's prototype technology, you're talking about autonomous cars.
I'm talking about autonomous in
You're
this
talking
case.
about autonomous cars. Obviously, we are testing autonomous cars today, and then when you're testing, it's because you're not sure that you have enough robustness in the technology to avoid that. So it's normal that when you're testing in a small environment, from time to time you have incidents. It's normal. Because if not, you would not test, you just mass market it. I don't think this is going to stop this technology for a very simple reason, is because the benefit of this technology are so big that a accident or an incident is not going to stop it. And I'm going to tell you why this is so big, because this is going to be driven by consumer autonomy. This is not going to be driven, I'm not talking only about the driverless cars, I'm talking about empowered driver, because that's what autonomy is about. This is going to be driven by consumer, because for consumer it means I can do other things in the car, I can decide when I drive, when I don't drive. And particularly autonomous cars are very safe. This is the most important thing, because you are replacing human interaction with the machine by computer interaction with the machine. And we know that usually humans fail more than computers, particularly within, 1.4 million dead on the roads every year on the planet. 90% of them are due to human mistake. If you replace human interface with the machine, you're going to eliminate that. It's as simple as that, because as you know very well, artificial intelligence will put it into the car, you're going to drive following the speed limit, you're not going to nap on the car, you're not going to drink, you're not going to text, you're not going to do a lot of the things which are today at the origin of a lot of the accidents. And the car is going to stop whenever he sees obstacles, because you know that in emerging market, one of the main reasons of death is car against pedestrians. Driver doesn't see the pedestrian cross in places where there is no light, etc., etc. All of this is impossible, because now with all the sensors we put in the car is going to stop. Right. Whenever it detects an obstacle, it's going to stop. So autonomy means safety. Safety is something on which the regulator is very sensitive.
Okay, so I want to just stop here briefly and do a little bit of audience polling, just to get back to the question of consumer demand. If you could open your apps, and the question, which should be coming up, what's the likelihood that you'd swap your gas-powered car for electric? And let's assume that you're going to get a little bit of incentive from regulators, from governments. Let's see what the audience is saying. Wow, okay. We've got basically 54%, roughly 54% are highly likely to swap their gas-powered cars. So I think this audience is prepared to make that switch.
I'm sorry, your audience is in France.
In France,
yeah,
this audience.
But this is very important, because I can tell you that when you do the same survey in China, you'll get probably 90%. Because the incentives are so big made by the Chinese regulator that automatically the people who are in the audience, what they are thinking, not so much, some of them are probably technology fans, but a lot of them are going to think, okay, the price of my car, the resale value, the total cost of ownership, the robustness, etc. So all of this, I end up saying electric car. Why? We heard yesterday the French government saying, we're going to be multiplying by 5 the number of electric cars sold in France. The mayor of Paris said by 2023 there is no more diesel engine. By 2030, no more internal combustion engine. So if I'm a consumer sitting here and I want to renew my car, why do you want me to buy a diesel car? I'm going to say, well, I'm going to resell it in 5 or 6 years down the road. God knows what kind of pricing I'm going to get onto the market. So it's very important to understand that the market-driven stuff are a little bit more volatile than what is driven by regulator. When the regulator and the politician are going into one direction, you have a safe market.
So I want to turn to the groups that you oversee. Nissan and Renault work very effectively together. They invest very effectively together. Combined, they would be even more formidable, considering the ambitions you have for electrification and technology. And I guess my question is, will we see a combined, single-listed Renault-Nissan this year or next?
No, I don't think you're going to see it this year or next. I think, the whole idea of the alliance from the beginning is to say, how can you maintain the pride and the engagement of people belonging to different companies and at the same time make them work together in a very efficient way? That's the question. Because the industry is a big cemetery of mergers or failed mergers. I mean, when you work in the car industry and look what happened, you're not too much excited about a merger because there is practically no merger which worked. A lot of the merger, in fact, collapsed and destroyed a lot of value and destroyed a lot of company. You know, my friend Dieter Zetsche, with whom we have a strategic, can tell you books about it, because Daimler, Chrysler, Mitsubishi, which was considered as a merger in heaven, ended up in a big collapse. And the reasons are always the same. You know, at the end of the day, the strength of any company is the ability to motivate people, to do things more than competition. And how are you going to do that if some of these people consider themselves as second-rate citizens into a big environment where they are working in Japan and their boss is in Germany, or when they are working in the United States and it's not going to work. It doesn't work. So the only way you're going to make company working together if they feel secure in their identity. So that's the whole concept of the alliance. So obviously, we didn't have any previous experience. We don't have a book case. We tried to create it by ourselves. It has been working for 19 years successfully. You know, and today we have Renault, Nissan, and Mitsubishi working together. The three companies are very solid. They have a very strong identity. Now, there is a fundamental question which is being asked about, is this sustainable? I mean, for 18 years is not sufficient. That means people are going to say, okay, is this sustainable long term? Which means when this generation of leaders of the alliance will pass, the new leaders who have not seen the beginning of the alliance, will they maintain the same spirit? And this is a fair question. And this is a fair question. And this is where we will be working in order to make sure that what we have been building for the last 19 years is going to stay in the future. So people say, why don't you merge? Well, merging is one solution with all the caveat we know, because you know, when you merge, at the end of the day, you start to create problems of identity. People are not motivated. They start to look right, should be looking left, etc. How can you maintain the sustainability of the system? How can you maintain the integration of all these companies with a strong identity and at the same time in a system that would not preoccupy some stakeholder by saying, oh, is this going to be stopped when the founder or the founders or the leaders or the actual leaders are gone? This is a fundamental question. I don't think it's going to be solved in 1 year. I don't think it's a short-term issue, but this is something on which we need to bring a solution. And we're going to bring a solution which is specific. I mean, so far we have been working in a way which is very different, very innovative compared to the way the industry works.
Yeah, so we reported that the Nissan side was resisting a merger, and so
No, I mean, obviously, as you know very well, media likes dramas, and you know, this is resist, is this one, is so yeah, if not, it's boring. Nobody's going to be interested in the story. So no, I don't think there is a resistance. There is always the same thing, that let's continue to work as a partner. We understand the preoccupation there are about the sustainability of the system. Let's try to find something that would reassure the stakeholders that this is going to continue, but at the same time maintain this motivation due to the fact that we have strong identity. You know, Mitsubishi joined. Mitsubishi is today selling about 1 million cars. You know, so Renault is, just to give you an idea of the size, Renault 4 million, Mitsubishi 1 million, Nissan 6 million, okay, 641. That's the situation. And this year, we're going to be crossing 11 million cars sold per year. Okay. Very probably position us again as the largest automotive group. So Mitsubishi being 1 million, you can understand that when you're a small player, you worry about your identity. You don't want the Mitsubishi brand to be diluted into this big magma of, okay? So it's normal, and we reinforce this. We say, no. You know, you're going to have your autonomy, you have your own brand, but at the same time, you're going to be able to benefit from all the synergies coming from developing technologies together, buying parts together, etc. That's the beauty of the system, and we need to maintain this in a way which is not dependent on people. You know, we need to put in place processes, way of working, that people don't worry about, say, oh, the way this guy is gone, the whole thing is going to collapse. No, I understand the fear, but at the same time, we have developed a culture which goes beyond that.
Understood. Okay. Let's talk just quickly about the Alliance is investing up to $1 billion in mobility startups via Alliance Ventures. And one of the first investments was in a company that does cobalt-free battery materials for electric cars. Our Bloomberg New Energy Finance team this week reported that cobalt supplies is one of the biggest threats to car sales over the next 7 years. How much of that was a consideration when you made that first investment?
Well, the battery technology today is mainly around lithium ion, and the battery lithium ion use a lot of cobalt. And as you know, cobalt resources are concentrated in one African country. And there is a little bit preoccupation about what happened if something happened in this country. Okay, so it's normal that we're trying to say, okay, we need to get out of this technology and try to have another technology that is cobalt free. And in fact, the main problem and challenge that the car maker is facing today is how much should I invest in order to face all the technological challenge I have in front of me. The Alliance, the three companies, are going to be investing for the next 6 years 50 billion euro. 50 billion euro of investments, okay? So, but even with 50 billion euro, we cannot develop everything. We're going to have to concentrate on some specific technologies, and we're going to have to delegate other technologies or to our suppliers or to go find solutions with startups.
The 50 billion, just to be clear, where's most of that money going? You're investing that in predominantly in...
Yeah, you invest on electric cars, you invest on autonomous cars, you invest on connectivity, on mobility services, you invest to improve safety. I mean, there are a lot of investments.
For the whole panoply. Got it.
Okay, so my point is, even with 50 billion euros, you can't face all the demand. So what you do is you need to make sure that you're not duplicating investment with your supplier. So from time to time, I'm going to tell supplier, you're going to develop the technology and you're going to give us the parts. And from time to time, you have no solution to your question. For example, alternative technology on battery, we could have hired engineers, make a new department, and start it. We said, no, if there is a startup who can do it, let's go invest into this startup, because at the end of the day, the startup is made by entrepreneurs. They can develop faster, maybe cheaper than us, and we can benefit from the output. So this is within what we call the technology planning, where you say, what are you going to do internally? What are you going to delegate to your suppliers? And when are you going to go for solution with startups?
Okay, so you have ties to many different countries, Brazil, France, Lebanon, Japan. Our Business Week magazine called you the ultimate Davos man, and your industry depends on a global economy. But what do you tell your workers in Sunderland, UK, or who work in your plant in Mississippi, who think that globalization is depriving them, and who votes for protectionism? How do you tell those workers that globalization, this is for your good?
Well, first, I don't make speeches inside the company about globalization. I don't think this is a topic that people are interested in. We talk a lot about exchanges between different countries, and people see the benefit of it because, for example, in the case of Sunderland, I don't make big speeches on globalization, but we tell people 80% of the production of Sunderland is exported. It's sufficient, okay? 80% is exported means you're going to shut down the country, 80% of production is gone, okay? So there are so many obvious, concrete stuff that you can put in front of people who are against globalization, just to tell them what you eat, what you buy, your salary, your jobs are so much dependent on what's happening at the level of globalization. If you realize this, you should be supporting globalization. Now, globalization is not something which is perfect. It's not something which is always fair. I understand all of this. But at the end of the day, when you look about how much globalization brought to the table, not only to emerging markets where the case is obvious, but even in developed markets, you can make the case. But you should not make the case in a very theoretical academic exercise where people get bored very quickly with terms they don't understand. You should put on the table concrete cases where they benefit directly from globalization. And I can tell you, this is very easy case to do, particularly when you're working in the car industry.
Real quickly, with our last seconds, will your successor need to come from a tech background or an engineering background?
Frankly, I don't think the background is so important. What is important is first track record. Obviously, you need performers. This is number one, and the ability to understand the challenges and to act on them. It can be an engineering background, tech background, etc. That's not the most important feature. Most important feature is openness to what's coming, and ability to face the challenge, not only intellectually also, but ability to act in function of that.
Carlos Ghosn, thank you very much. Please give a round of applause
Thank
for
you.
Mr. Ghosn. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. Thank you.